The photograph looked ordinary, 5 people posing stiffly in the dusty sun of 1881, but when I zoomed in, my breath stopped, because the woman standing in the middle didn't have a face, not blurred, not damaged, just gone. The rain had already begun to fall when Elena Ward unlocked the front door of the small town archive building. Her shoes left a trail of wet prints across the old checkered floor. Dark squares softened by age, pale squares cracked like dry skin. She flipped the entrance switch, and the fluorescent lights sputtered awake with a hum that vibrated through the cold, quiet room. Every morning began the same way, predictable and calm, but today something felt different, like the air itself was tense, waiting. By afternoon, Elena had finished the tedious task of cataloging a stack of handwritten letters and was preparing to clock out early. Her mother had a doctor's appointment, and Elena wanted to be there. But just as she reached for her bag, she noticed an envelope sitting on the corner of her desk. She frowned. It hadn't been there that morning. It was thick and yellowed, its edges curled as if exposed to decades of humidity. No sender's name, no stamp, just her name scrawled in black ink across the front. Elena Ward, her pulse skipped. Someone had dropped this off by hand, but who and why? She hesitated, then slid a finger beneath the seal. Inside was a single object, thin, brittle, the texture unmistakable, a photograph. She pulled it out carefully. It was stiff with age, the black and white image faded to sepia. At first glance it seemed harmless, just a family portrait from the late 1800. She recognized the style immediately, stiff. Backed chairs, starched collars, a dust-laden porch. 5 figures stood in a solemn line. A father, mother, 2 sons, and her breath caught. The central figure, what should have been the eldest daughter, had no face. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, nothing, just a smooth expanse of pale paper. Elena blinked, her stomach tightening. At first she thought it was damage, maybe a spill, or a tear, or decades of sun exposure. But the rest of the photograph was pristine. The wood grain on the porch behind the family was sharp. The father's coat buttons gleamed. Even the 2 boys' unevenly combed hair was crisp. Only the young woman was blank. Deliberately blank. Elena flipped the photo over. On the back, written in messy ink as if by a trembling hand, was a single sentence: "Return her face before the 17th." A chill ran straight down her spine. Return her face. What did that mean? She set the photo down, trying to steady her breathing. This was likely a prank. People occasionally handed her oddities, hoping she'd identify or authenticate them. But something about this was different. Something felt wrong. She stared at the faceless girl. A heaviness settled in her chest, almost like grief. Grief for someone she had never met. The rain outside intensified, tapping angrily against the roof. Elena locked the archives and stepped out into the drenched evening. Her car heater blasted warm air over her chilled hands as she drove through winding back roads to her mother's house. Diana Ward lived in a small bungalow near the town's only lake, its windows constantly fogged by the damp air drifting off the water. When Elena entered, she found her mother sitting in her favorite armchair, wrapped in a knitted blanket. Diana's once strong frame had become frail over the last few years, her breath occasionally catching as she tried to speak. Still, her mind remained sharp, and she always recognized the moment something troubled her daughter. "You're pale," Diana said softly as Elena set her bag down. "Long day, a strange day," Elena corrected. She pulled the photograph from her coat pocket and handed it to her mother. She expected a dismissive comment or a light-hearted laugh. Instead, Diana's hands began to shake. "Elena, no," her voice cracked. "Where did you get this?" "It was left at my office. No name, no note besides." Elena turned the photo to show the words again. "Return her face before the 17th. Diana pressed her lips together. Her eyes glistened, not from sickness, but from fear, real fear. "Elena, burn it. Burn it, Mom. It's probably just a damaged photo from some old estate." "No." Diana clutched her daughter's wrist. "You don't understand. People have died because of that photograph." Elena felt her heart stagger. "Mom, what are you talking about?" But her mother just looked away, as if ashamed of the knowledge she carried. That night, after helping Diana to bed, Elena returned home with the photograph tucked in her purse. She placed it on her desk, turning her lamp on low. The room glowed in a warm amber light, but it didn't ease the growing knot inside her chest. Her apartment was small, filled with books, old documents, and the smell of instant coffee. A place she'd built from years of quiet living and quiet dreams. She should have felt safe there, but she didn't. She picked up the photograph again and studied the blank face, her fingertips brushing the smooth paper. The closer she looked, the stranger it felt, as if the girl's missing face created a vacuum in the picture, a small, silent scream frozen in time. "This doesn't make sense," Elena whispered to herself. "Photographs don't do that." She leaned back in her chair. Her life had been a series of disappointments lately. Budget cuts at the archive, her unstable finances, and the weight of caring for her mother alone. Sometimes she felt invisible, as if the world passed through her without noticing. She didn't know why she felt connected to the faceless woman, but something inside her recognized the ache of being erased. Maybe that was why, instead of locking the photo away in a drawer, she whispered, "I'll help you." The moment the words left her lips, the lamp beside her flickered. Then the bulb cracked, a sharp, sudden pop, sending tiny glass fragments across the desk. Elena gasped and stumbled back, staring at the smoking socket. The photograph fluttered to the floor. She crouched to pick it up, her hands trembling, and then she froze. For the briefest heartbeat, she could have sworn she saw the faint outline of something on the faceless girl's head. A shadow where an eye should be. She blinked. It was gone, but her heart raced. She should have thrown the photo away or listened to her mother. Instead, she placed it carefully back on the desk. That night, sleep eluded her. Her dreams were restless, filled with flickering shadows and distant voices. She awoke repeatedly, drenched in sweat, only to find the photograph still where she left it, silent, waiting. The next morning, sunlight filtered through her blinds in thin golden slits. Her alarm buzzed, jarring her from the thin line between sleep and waking. She dressed mechanically and carried the photograph with her to work, tucked inside a notebook. The archive building felt colder than usual. The air conditioning rattled loudly. Elena sat at her desk, trying to focus on her tasks, but her thoughts kept drifting. Questions swarmed her mind. Who sent her the picture? Why her? What did return her face even mean? Why the 17th? There was only one person she trusted with unexplained historical artifacts, Marcus Hale. He was a historian, a researcher, and, though neither admitted it, someone who cared deeply for her. They'd grown up in the same town, shared countless childhood memories, and occasionally met for coffee when life felt overwhelming. By afternoon, she had made up her mind. She gathered the photograph and drove across town to the Haddon's Creek Historical Society, a faded white building with peeling paint and creaky floors. Inside, Marcus looked up from a stack of old newspapers. His brown hair was tangled and his glasses slid down his nose in a way that made him look both brilliant and exhausted. "Elena," he said, surprised, "you okay? You look spooked. You need to see something." He motioned for her to sit. She handed him the photograph. Marcus examined it silently for a long moment. His casual expression shifted to confusion, then to shock. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice low. "It was delivered to me. No note except what's on the back." He turned the photo and read the sentence. The color drained from his face. "Elena, this photo is of the Wilson family. They lived here in the 1880s. The father, Charles Wilson, was a railroad worker. The mother, Margaret, was a seamstress. The two boys were Jacob and Samuel, and the girl, the faceless one," Elena whispered. "Annabelle," Marcus said. "Annabelle Wilson." Elena leaned forward. "You know their names, their story." Marcus swallowed. "Everyone in this town knows it. It's one of our oldest mysteries." He hesitated before continuing. "Annabelle disappeared on October 17th, 1881, the same day this photograph was taken." Elena felt as though the air around her had deepened, thickened. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "No trace," he said. Some claimed she ran away. Others said she was taken, but the most disturbing rumor was... He trailed off. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "What rumor?" "That she saw something in the woods behind her house, something she shouldn't have seen, and that it took her face." Elena scoffed weakly, though her unease only grew. Marcus, that sounds like a campfire story. Marcus lowered his voice further. Maybe, but there's more. Over the decades, people who tried to restore her, image artists, photo editors, archivists, started having nightmares, seeing a faceless woman in their mirrors, hearing whispers calling them into the woods. Elena shivered. That's ridiculous, Marcus nodded. I don't believe the supernatural parts either, but here's the strange thing. Every one of them died within months, falls, sudden illness, accidents. Her stomach tightened. And you're saying all this started with this photo? Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Elena's phone buzzed suddenly, her mother calling. Her heart lurched. She stepped outside the room to answer. Mom, are you okay? Elena. Diana's voice was weak but trembling, as if she had been crying. Please, listen to me. Don't let anyone try to restore that girl's face. Don't research her. Don't look for answers. Annabelle Wilson was erased for a reason. Elena closed her eyes, torn between fear and the stubbornness she'd inherited from the very woman pleading with her. Mom, I already started. Her mother inhaled sharply. Then stop now, Elena, before the call cut off. Elena stared at her phone, dread building. She rushed back into Marcus's office. I need to know everything about Annabelle, she said firmly. Marcus hesitated, concern in his eyes. Why get involved in something so dangerous? Because someone sent it to me, Elena said. Someone wants me to bring her back, and because... She glanced down at the faceless woman. She didn't know how to say what she felt without sounding irrational, because no one deserves to be forgotten. Marcus sighed heavily, but pulled out a folder anyway. Yellowed documents, faded photographs, census records. He laid them all out in front of her. Elena studied the one surviving image of Annabelle, one from childhood, long before the faceless photograph. Annabelle had wide eyes, gentle and wise, and a soft smile that reached them. Something about her expression made Elena's heart ache. This is the only known picture of her before she vanished, Marcus said. After her disappearance, the family refused to talk about her, almost like they wanted the world to forget she ever existed. Elena thought of the faceless photograph, the erasure so intentional it almost felt cruel. People don't erase you unless they're afraid of what you represent, she murmured. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Elena said, someone erased her face for a reason, and someone wants me to put it back. That night, back home, Elena placed Annabelle's childhood photo beside the faceless one. The contrast was unsettling, one alive with warmth, the other hollow and cold. She reached for her pen, tracing invisible lines from memory to blankness, imagining how Annabelle might have looked at age 19. But before she could begin, she felt the air shift, heavier, warmer. She looked up sharply. The photograph's surface rippled, just slightly, like a breath passing over water. Elena's throat tightened. Annabelle, she whispered. No response, only silence. She stared at the faceless girl long into the night, until her eyes grew heavy and the lines between waking and dreaming blurred. She dreamed she stood at the Wilson farmhouse. Fog curled around her feet like cold fingers. The four visible family members stood exactly as they had in the photo, unmoving, lifeless, but Annabelle's faceless head slowly turned toward her. Elena jolted awake, gasping, sweat dripping down her spine. She stumbled to her desk. The photograph was different. The blank oval wasn't entirely blank anymore. A faint curve, just the hint of a mouth, had appeared. Her breath hitched. She wasn't imagining this. Something was happening. Something had begun the moment she promised to help Annabelle, and Elena knew, deep in her bones, that turning back was no longer an option. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She was chosen, but whether she was chosen to save Annabelle or join her, she didn't yet know. Morning broke with a pale, muted sky, one of those colorless dawns that felt neither alive nor dead, just hovering in the space between. Elena Ward woke with a sharp breath, as if someone had called her name moments before she opened her eyes. For a full minute she simply lay still, listening to the unfamiliar rhythm of her own heartbeat. Something in her was shifting, restless, aware. She turned her head toward her desk. The photograph lay exactly where she left it, but not exactly how she remembered it. The faint curve of Annabelle's mouth, thin, fragile, like the echo of a forgotten smile, was still there. But it was deeper now, more defined, almost deliberate. Elena squeezed her arms around herself, her skin prickling. She approached the desk slowly, drawn forward by fear and fascination in equal measure. For the first time since receiving the cursed fragment of history, she whispered aloud, "What happened to you, Annabelle?" There was no answer, of course, only the hum of the refrigerator in her tiny kitchen and the subtle shifting of the floorboards under her bare feet. But the silence felt heavier than before. She sat down and lifted the photograph with trembling fingers. Something inside her tightened, an emotional tug like an invisible thread wrapping itself around her chest. She didn't know Annabelle Wilson personally, but this girl, this faceless ghost from 1881, had somehow slipped beneath her skin. By noon, the question had grown too heavy to ignore. She needed answers. And there was only one place to find them. The Haddons Creek Historical Society was already buzzing with activity when she arrived. Students shuffled through aisles of archives, the old ceiling fans squeaking as they rotated, stirring stale air scented with aged paper and mildew. Marcus Hale spotted Elena the moment she walked through the door. His expression tightened when he saw the look on her face. "You didn't sleep," he said quietly. "Not much." She glanced around, lowering her voice. The photograph changed again. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "You're joking." She shook her head. "The mouth, it's there now, or part of it." He motioned urgently toward his office, pulling her inside and shutting the door behind them. "Let me see." Elena retrieved the photo from her bag. Marcus leaned in, and when his eyes landed on the faint mouth, he inhaled sharply. "Dear God, I'm not imagining this, right?" She whispered. "No," he said softly. "You're not." He didn't say what they were both thinking. Photographs did not change themselves. Marcus pressed his palms together beneath his chin, thinking intensely. "There is something I never told you, something about Annabelle." Elena's breath caught. "Go on." He walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a worn folder and placed it on his desk. Inside were brittle documents, handwritten witness accounts, faded ink, and one battered diary. "Elena," he said, "Annabelle Wilson wasn't just a missing girl. She was a name the town buried." He slid the diary toward her. "This belonged to Margaret Wilson, Annabelle's mother." Elena opened it gently. The ink had faded but was still legible. Her heart pounded as she read the first entry. "Annabelle sees things I cannot see. She speaks of shadows with eyes. She says the woods whisper truths." A chill dripped down Elena's spine. Another entry dated just a month before Annabelle's disappearance read, "My daughter says she must reveal the truth about the railroad men. She says she cannot stay silent while children suffer. I fear she will bring ruin upon us all." Elena swallowed hard. She was trying to expose something. Marcus nodded. Possibly. Back then, powerful men controlled this area. Railroad tycoons, land barons, people who could silence anyone who threatened their profits. And Annabelle knew something. That's what the rumors say. Something bad, something dangerous. Elena looked up, her voice trembling. "So they erased her." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Some believe the family was forced to destroy every trace of her existence, to save themselves, erase their own daughter." Marcus looked pained. "History is crueler than ghosts, Elena." She looked down at the faceless photograph again. Her chest ached with a strange, almost unbearable sadness, not for the legend, but for the living girl who had been punished for daring to speak. Marcus continued softly, "There's more." He pulled out another document, an old newspaper clipping. Its headline sent a spike of cold through Elena's blood. "Local girl disappears after claiming to see men without shadows." Beneath the text was a hand-drawn sketch of Annabelle, again younger, alive, eyes bright with fear and determination. Elena stared at the picture for a long moment before whispering. She wasn't crazy. She was warning people. And no one listened, Marcus said. "Except maybe you." By the time Elena returned home, storm clouds were gathering overhead. Wind howled against her windows, rattling the thin glass panes. She made tea but couldn't bring herself to drink it. That night, the dreams came again. She stood in the woods, the same eerie fog curling around her feet. The trees were tall, silent, ancient. In the distance, something glimmered. A figure. She walked toward it. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, but the closer she got, the more she sensed Annabelle. This time the girl didn't turn her head. Instead, she lifted her hand, pointing toward a dark shape in the trees. A man, no, not a man, a silhouette of one, all wide, shouldered, featureless, a shadow with a body, and it was watching her. Elena gasped awake, her heart hammering violently against her ribs. For a moment she couldn't breathe. The room seemed to pulse in and out of focus. She stumbled toward her desk, pressing a trembling hand onto its surface. The photograph was different again. Now, alongside the faint mouth, a single eyelash-shaped line had emerged, barely visible but unmistakable. A beginning of an eye. She staggered backward, knocking over a stack of books. "No," she whispered, "this is impossible." But her fear was not enough to push her away. Instead, she sank into her chair, staring at the evolving face. "I'm going to find you," she whispered. "I'm going to tell your story." And somewhere, deep within the stillness of the room, something answered. A shift of air, a whisper, a presence. Elena didn't move. The next morning, Marcus insisted they visit the old Wilson house together. The farmhouse had been abandoned for nearly a century, its roof caving, its foundation sinking into the earth like a dying giant. Weeds grew wild across the path leading to the porch. "This place is haunted," Marcus muttered. Elena didn't reply. She felt drawn to it, pulled almost magnetically, as if Annabelle herself were guiding her. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust coated every surface like a second skin. A broken cradle lay in one corner, its wood splintered. A rusted stove sagged against the far wall. But what caught Elena's eye was something small and gleaming beneath a collapsed shelf. She lifted it gently, a silver locket. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a tiny portrait, a sketch of Annabelle Wilson's face at 19, her real face, gentle, pure, brave. Elena felt her throat close. She traced the lines of the drawing as if they were the girl's cheekbones, as if she could feel her presence through the ink. "This should have been on the photograph," she whispered. Marcus looked over her shoulder. "And now it can be." She shook her head. "Not yet. I need to understand what happened to her first." Marcus hesitated. "Elena, I don't want you getting lost in this. Whoever erased her was dangerous. And someone sent her picture to me," she said firmly. "They wanted me to fix it, or they wanted to lure you," he warned. She turned to him. "If you're scared, you can leave." "I'm not leaving you," he said quietly. Back at Marcus's office, they pieced together the final fragments of Annabelle's life. Old news reports revealed something horrific. Children who worked on the railroad construction had gone missing in the same month Annabelle vanished. The railroad company denied involvement. The town sheriff looked the other way. But Annabelle, young, idealistic, fiercely protective, had written a letter the day before she disappeared. "I cannot stay silent. I saw them drag a boy toward the tree line. I saw the men with no shadows follow. If I do not speak, who will?" Elena felt tears sting her eyes. "She tried to save them," she whispered. "She tried to fight back." Marcus nodded, and she paid the price. Elena clenched her fists. Her own family destroyed her picture, destroyed her memory. They weren't protecting her. They were protecting themselves. Marcus exhaled. "People will do terrible things to survive." Elena brushed her thumb over the faceless photograph. "No," she said softly, "terrible things happen when good people stay silent." That night, Elena sat at her desk. Rain hammered against her window. Thunder rolled across the sky like something ancient awakening. She placed both photographs side by side, the faceless one and Annabelle's locket portrait. Then she began the process of restoration. Her hands trembled, not with fear but with determination, with reverence. Brushstroke by brushstroke, she traced the outline of Annabelle's jawline, the curve of her cheek, the placement of her mouth, the shape of her eyes. As she worked, something extraordinary happened. The air warmed, the shadows receded, and a soft glow, barely visible, surrounded the photograph. Elena's heart quickened, but she didn't stop. She kept going until the faceless girl was no longer faceless, until Annabelle Wilson was whole again. The moment she placed her pen down, a gentle sigh passed through the room. Not a draft, not the wind. A sigh, Elena looked up sharply, but no one was there. She whispered, "You're home now." A soft flicker of light glowed on the photograph, once, twice, then faded. Annabelle had been restored, her story reclaimed. Her existence no longer buried. The next morning, when Elena woke, the photograph was no longer blank. Annabelle's restored face looked peaceful, almost grateful, and something unbelievable had happened. Something that made Elena press a hand to her chest and sink into her chair. Annabelle was smiling, not drawn, not forced, but as if the girl's spirit had finally been freed. Elena felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I didn't save you," she whispered. "You saved me." For the first time in years, Elena felt alive, connected, purposeful, seen. The loneliness that had gnawed at her heart for so long had lifted. Annabelle's story had changed her. She wasn't invisible anymore. She had brought a forgotten woman back to life, not through magic, not through superstition, but through courage and truth. And the message Annabelle left behind was clear. Silence erases the innocent, but courage restores them. Elena published Annabelle's full story online and in local archives. People from across the world learned who Annabelle Wilson truly was, a girl who fought silence, who protected others, who refused to be erased. And Elena, for the first time in years, felt proud, useful, connected. Her life had changed forever, not through curses or ghosts, but through the courage to restore a forgotten woman's place in the world. In the end, the message was clear. Some faces aren't missing. They're waiting for someone brave enough to bring them back.